Welcome to the Coach to Coach podcast. On today's show, we have Coach Taye Daniel-Ayibiowu. To start off today's show, I'm going to try something a little bit different. I want to leave you with the 3 takeaways from this episode in hopes you listen through the whole thing and gain a great insight into Coach T and his world. First off, focus on youth development. What an amazing way to go about building the sport of rugby in the United States. Second, it doesn't rain forever. According to T, God's got a plan for him, and even through the tough times, he sees it through. Third, establish where you want to be and then work backward from there. This is a great mantra to talk about goal setting and always keeping the end in mind and building those little steps backwards from there to gain huge achievements on the end of that. I really hope you enjoy this episode with Coach T. And if you like the show, please like and subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. This is the Coach to Coach podcast. Tell me where you're coming from, bro.
Born in Queens. Raised between Queens and the Harlem area, Manhattan area. Just was a small little punk in Queens, Southside Jamaica, Queens, where basically came from a single parent household. Growing up in tough streets, and you think like me, I went to sports, down the sports route early on. I think if you put a basketball or football, any ball in my hand, it was like, hey, it was either putting it through the net or running through someone or stepping someone or just, any sport, honestly. I basically played them all, and just like, rugby has been the focus eventually, and just actually captured my heart and allowed me to elevate, throughout the world and throughout just life in general.
Multi-sport athlete, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I think a lot of us grew up that way.
Yeah.
If you had to rank your top 3 favorite sports that are non-rugby, what would those 3 sports be that you played? You had to have played them too.
Yeah. Wow. It would be, I'm a big Knicks fan, diehard Knicks. I watch Knicks religiously. It would be basketball, then football, go Bills. And then from there, I would probably say soccer.
Oh, what team do you follow in soccer?
I haven't. I followed Arsenal a little bit, but I haven't in years, been following much more. I haven't followed that much in a while. But yeah, I played soccer because my dad's Nigerian.
Okay.
So I wanted to impress my dad early on. So he was like, you kick the soccer ball, I think about, coming to a game or, so my biggest thing as a kid was trying to impress my dad and saying, hey, look, again, dribble a ball through someone's legs or dribble a ball up down the field. So, yeah.
You know what? I love that. My parents were not athletes. So when me and my sister decided to play some sort of sports, they were very confused, but really supportive. Right. So, man, that's awesome that he knew sports, and then he pushed a little bit of soccer just to help connect with your dad. How did you recognize that coaching was something you wanted to do?
Honestly, I didn't. I think, my biggest thing is when I was a kid, I wanted to be a pastor. I wanted to lead people. Yeah.
Okay.
I am. I'm a man of God. I bring my faith into everything that I do. I wanted to lead people. I wanted to be a voice for the voiceless. Be able to give opportunity for, I always see it as opportunity to give a young man perspective or a young woman perspective. Growing up where I'm from, I think you only did 2 things. Either you gangbang or, you sold drugs or, and then that was an early grave, but I think sports, was something that actually allowed me to be vocal, to be a leader in. I was always, an athlete, picked by friends, be a captain, picked by teachers, and picked by people to, be the voice of a classroom or stand up for people. I just think, my journey and I think my family, my background, my grandmother was a pastor, I have a few other family members that was ministers, that stood up in the church and, and preached the word and, and prophesied over the people. I think my grandmother, she wanted me to be a pastor, but I think God had other plans for me. Leading people was going to be eventually like be teaching, or I studied psychology at St. Bonaventure University. I wanted to just be able to help young men and young women that look like me, find a place and a comfort in this world. And and say, hey, you do have an option, you do have a platform that you can stand on. And it just happened, rugby. I think rugby has been the driving vehicle to allow me to be able to help a young man be able to help a young woman that looks like me and find, their niche in the world.
It's very interesting you bring up your faith.
Yeah.
And early on, not family pressure is not the right word though, but your family legacy of embracing your faith and practicing as a pastor or as a preacher, right?
Well, I'm not,
I
I'm not a pastor.
no, not thinking about going down that route,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Very interesting. You said that you wanted to be a leader of people, a leader of young women and men,
Mhm.
people who look like you, right? I'm going to be a little vulnerable here,
Okay.
right? And I haven't always had a deep connection with a particular religion. I was
Hmm.
a military man and did a lot of stuff. I was connected to something spiritual, right? So I've never really practiced a religion, and I've never been really close to religion myself. But I have a friend that I coached at Silicon Valley, and we call him Preacher,
Okay.
right? Jeff and I sat down, a Preacher and I sat down, and we were talking about coaching and life and
Mhm.
his journey with his family and his wife as a nurse and him as a preacher, and he taught me as in parentis locus.
Okay.
Have you ever heard that?
Okay. Do you
He
want to?
said
Yeah.
he said coaching, preaching, educators, professors, it's in parentis locus snacks. And I said, I don't know Latin, bro. Tell me what the hell that means. And he said it's in the place of the parent.
Hmm.
You meet people on their journey, and you don't replace their parent, but you become a figure in their life to guide them, to lead them, to pick them up when they're down or celebrate them when they're up. And I was just like, damn, okay,
Mind blowing, right then and there.
mind blowing.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, he said that's like one of the first things we learn, when you becoming a preacher and you go to school for that. And I was like, damn. So I think you didn't go into the preacher, pastor, fatherhood, right? The religious aspect of it, but as a coach, you're doing very similar things, bro. That's awesome. How did you begin playing rugby?
Yeah, yeah. I seen it played when I was in high school. I
Mhm.
went to First Douglas Academy in Harlem, and I went to a few other places. When I was in high school, I seen a few kids, outside, like tossing a rugby ball around, and then I remember a guy yelling like, "Hey, try this in the park," and I was like, yeah, what, and like telling us like, "Hey, don't knock it until you try it." Stepping out there. I didn't think it was anything seriously until I got to college, is when I actually took initiative to do it. But I seen it and I was like, all right, like you can, like, hey, you mean you just grab the ball and just step that guy? It's like, it was, to me, it was like playing tag,
Mm.
like it's like catch me if you can, So it's like, and it's like me, I was like, well, you put a ball in my hand, man. Tell me to run to the store. Is this a carton of milk? Like I got to get it home to my parents and get it home, to my family.
Yeah.
So it's just something that, like, I guess that I moved towards, especially in college, like taking it much more seriously and picking it up and being like, okay, I think my coaches early on knew right away, was like, okay, hey, you're destined to do something big,
Mm.
and like, I think like within college, getting hurt or, having injuries and just, wanted to be around the game and stick around the game when you're hurt and not being left out. You kind of
Yeah.
sort of like take the playing hat off and put the coaching hat on. You just start looking at your coaches and being like, hey, if he did this, right then and there, you start developing.
Yeah.
just the characteristics and the qualities, what it would take, and and then studying psychology and just like always being want to know about the human mind and knowing what people are constantly doing and reading people.
Yeah.
It's easy to actually transition into coaching,
Mm-hmm.
just understanding like, hey, one, I'm always was good with people, can step into a room, be very sociable and talk to people and not afraid to stand on who I am and just, and then from there and to two is just like, okay, like, hey, learn the X's and O's, being able to be authentic in yourself and teach the game, and then know your population, know the people that you're teaching the game to, so transitioning into from an athlete to coaching, was always simple.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So if I hear you suffered an injury and then okay. And was it a career ending or just like,
No,
I don't,
so graduated college, played for Old Blue,
mhm.
here in New York City, one a really prestige club. Big shout out to Old Blue guys, and bigging you up. And like happened opportunity to be coached by guys like Marty Vail,
Mm,
Stephen Lewis, and like Dom Warren, who's at Dartmouth, and opportunity to play alongside Dom, and then being opportunity just to coach before he moved officially into coaching, and just picking their minds, like getting hurt, and realizing you're like, okay, like and then like I remember at an opportunity Dom telling me about Play Rugby USA,
mm,
nonprofit organization. I graduated college, was playing rugby, and then I was like, took a job, didn't like, punching a time clock 9 to 5. And you're like, yeah, I don't think I want to do this the rest of my life. And I remember Don Warren, Mark Griffin, and these guys, being a part of Old Blue and saying, hey, would you be interested in being a YDM? I'm like, a
mm,
YDM, a youth development mentor, a coach, an instructor, be able to coach kids,
mm,
and and that was at what, back in 2012.
mm.
Yeah, and then and there, I was like, all right. I was like, hey, okay. Didn't know that, that Dom, being surrounded by great coaches like Marty Vail and being surrounded by great personnel like Lance, Kavanaugh, Nate Osberger, Cam Dolan, Dylan Fawcett, all these guys,
Yeah.
playing inside them. Didn't know that I was actually picking up the game and learning a lot more from guys that have played. Nate Osberger, he's a big Minnesota guy, like a big
Scott
friend,
Yuma.
best
Scott
friend,
Yuma.
you
Good
know,
dude.
being around these guys and just I remember always being the guy that's like, okay, if I'm hurt, I'm hurt. Let me put the coaching hat on. Let me ask Marty Vail. Let me ask Stephen Lewis. Let me ask these coaches. What it why soak up some knowledge and just
Mm,
learn, and then
yeah.
just see how their mannerisms, how they act on the field, and how they conducted themselves, and push the team to new heights and higher levels constantly. I always think, I always say this to, I don't, people will be like, oh yeah, Marty Vail, he was a true character. To me, the man, like growing up where I grew up, you kind of need someone to discipline you and tell you like, hey man, you're wrong, So understanding he was a big firm believer of skills and
Mm,
just youth development, understanding why you're doing certain things on the rugby field and teaching it a precise way, so I was able to pick up so many things of of understanding the basic component of the skill of the passing and tackling,
mm,
and then Stephen Lewis is my mentor now, and we speak from day to day, and he's always like, hey, how are you feeling about this? And I could pick his mind and throw different things to the wall with Steve, with Steve all the time. But yeah, so got hurt, put the coaching hat on more and more. Started out with middle school,
mm,
now, right then and there, I knew, getting the kids to buy in, because their mindset is like a fish, you have to keep their attention. So, we would play little games that wasn't rugby per se, but that taught the game of rugby, like games like Sharks and Meadows. You would disguise it, as rugby. So you tell them like, hey, you need agility. agility before contact, put yourself into space, basic things. And then right then and there, like, had some success in middle school. I think one of the times the parents, we were at this tournament, middle school tournament at Play Rugby's like flag tournament. We were in like the semifinals. One of the kids scored a try in the corner. I'm like, the kids like start celebrating. Hey, get back on defense. We don't celebrate until we win. The parents looked at me. I was like looking at the parents. I was like, oh man, they probably go, they probably go like cut me after this, But we end up going on to win. And right then and there, I remember Ben Slaughter and these guys coming over to me like, man, I don't think middle school might be for you, but I think we got the high school, like, you coaching older kids, your temperament, you're very serious about it, your passion. People always say serious, I'm passionate, like about, all things that if you're gonna do something, do it at 110%, because there's no plan B for passion. So was able to build a few programs through Play Rugby USA, work with in the South Bronx at Moreau High School, worked in Manhattan at Martindale, being able to teach game of rugby to high school students early on. From there, gradually moved on to the academy, Play Rugby USA Academy, work with the Brooklyn Academy, and then so on. And so Manhattan, they have borough-based academies.
Yeah.
And Ned gradually moved in as assistant coach. And by 2017, they're like, hey, you're the guy to lead us the rest of the way.
And we're talking about your time at Play Rugby USA.
You started off in middle school, and I just want to shout you out for starting at middle school.
Yeah.
Because that is a level where you don't know how to coach until you coach middle school kids, right? Like,
yeah,
you said get their attention. Like, I did high school and a little bit of college rugby, and then I went to Minnesota and I became a YDO. I was doing middle school PE classes and stuff. And I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. I know all the tech. I know. Man, those kids ate me up. Those kids ate me up. And I had to learn how to like manage the classroom, do the little tricks of the trade, man. So shout out to you, bro, for you like starting at the middle school level and staying.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't stay long, but it's humble days of saying like, okay, hey, and I think working with youth early on and working with a younger group gives you helps you patience. You build the type of patience and understanding like, okay, hey, because at that age, they're supposed to fail. They're learning everything, like they're figuring out their bodies, their growth plates. So, those young kids I actually admire them, their passion for it, scoring tries and want to celebrate and jump around each other, because and they're at that point, at that age, they look at it as something just fun to do. They're not taking it seriously. Their parents sign them up for after school programming, they just want to so it was me learning a few games early on, and was able to incorporate rugby into it and teach flag, and then eventually I actually got to coach some of those kids eventually as they moved into the academy, because Play Rugby USA, it's all about youth development in terms of growing the game and just offering a platform for kids and from disenfranchised communities, underserved communities, and just, giving them a safe haven that they could come to, and not only offering rugby, but almost like it's a college prep program organization. So it's my pathway, I'm very blessed and very humbled that I started with middle school, able to do some great things with the young group of kids, and then from there, moving into the high school, building a program, at the high school level, helping Play Rugby USA, I get emotional because especially working with Play Rugby USA and working in my early days of coaching, working at Moreau High School. You know, I was there for about 5 years with them, moving in and out with the academy as well. And like, you know, a lot of the great young men like Yehendi Martinez, Christian Marrero, and all these guys, Yehendi Martinez eventually became a head coach of the academy, at Play Rugby USA, or Christian Marrero, taking up coaching as well. And a lot of these guys that look at me and be like, T, you helped me get started on my journey. I'm just in awe, of some levels that they've climbed and so many things that they've knocked out the park. And I'm like, man, I'm like, T, did you know, and this is like, T, did you know that if I knew at like 24 years old that I was going to make a difference in a kid's life, and all I was trying to do is give a young man perspective.
Yeah.
Give them perspective and say, hey, man, you don't have to, just because you're coming from a community, a poverty, you don't have to be that, I didn't know that sitting down with these young men was like, helping them, like, hey, figure out college applications, or just sitting down with them and saying like, hey, we're gonna make a difference. Don't worry. It's not about when. It's like, let's just worry about the how part right now, and let's get things together. We just did I don't want to go for tangent. We just did an alumni event last night, because I'm back with Play Rugby USA now, and I'm program director there. Man, and I got to see John Rodriguez, Elijah Billups. These guys are going on to Life University and play, and I'm like, man, and I'm looking at them, they all dressed up, in they suits and stuff like that, get off for work. I'm like, guys, I'm proud. I'm proud that I played a role in their journeys, and I had a helping hand along with other great coaches, to say like, hey man, like you're gonna be the difference in your community, So I just, man, coaching, I just, man, I think I always tell people like, God had a plan for me. He had a plan for me, and he knew that, that rugby was going to be the platform to allow me to help young men and women, rugby, because my biggest thing is I'm a big fan of youth development, and just to be on the ground floor and develop our youth and give them a platform to stand on, and rugby just happens to be that platform that I'm very just passionate about. And I can talk about rugby all day. I can talk about youth development all day, and just God had it fit that, with continue to elevate me, and like I remember early on, like, coaching academy, and we're winning in 2017. Shout out to guys like JJ Jackson, Danny Gazzino as well. Those guys as well was, a part of, like out early on with the coaching as well. Those guys are part, like I think a lot of us were like, we were together, like, Ryan Mattias, everyone as well, I coached with him, Nate Osberger coached with him as well, so they got to see Coach T in the early stages, and they would probably tell you like, man, T was yelling. T had these kids doing half moons and up and downs, like Malcolm's back and forth. But it was, with me, it was like, it was like just like, hey, discipline. Where talent takes you, talent only takes you as far, but discipline will take you rest of the way. Your talent, so tell teams, don't lean on talent. Lean on unity, lean on your discipline as a unit, So, man, like it was just been an honor. Like we won a lot of games. I remember winning Empire championships at the high school level in sevens, cleaning plates, cleaning teams out the way, like, putting, donut on teams, and teams are like, who is that? And who is that coach? I remember, when Dustin and them, like, Sevens Rugby Magazine, big shout out to Ryan Ginty. He's doing amazing work as well. Next Level Rugby and everything in that nature. Them, early stages, and like, like thinking like, oh well, like T, if you get on the platform, you make it. You made it. You made it. And then like God had other plans, man. Like, in 2018, being called to like, go coach at Nazareth University, starting a program from the ground up, building it, and then like, with just a man with a vision, my mentor, Coach Clarence, he will always say, establish where you want to be and work backwards from there. And I remember building that varsity program and just being like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then I'm like only 29, so I had like, really good 5 years up that way. And, so coaching has allowed me to just, elevate and see the world, go to some great places, make friends with some like amazing people from around the world, playing as well. Both playing and coaching has allowed me to do some amazing things.
I have a question for you. Well, I have a lot of questions for you, actually. And man, I'm loving your story, bro. You coming through a lot of different levels with a lot of different people. There's kind of a couple themes that have been going through the few pods that I've recorded. And one of the main ones is coaching is that long game, right? Like you're seeing your players last night at the alumni thing when you're like, I see you in a suit and tie right now, but I remember when you walked through that door, and you're not the same person that you were when I first met you. And that's why I think it's hitting you pretty hard. And it's really cool to see you experience that, adjacently, obviously, right? Like I'm just juiced up talking to you, bro, like, or listening to you talk.
Yeah.
So someone brought up a question to me the other day, and this is the first time I'm going to ask this on the show. And I think it's a great one. Actually, I asked Lance this the other day, like on a phone call. So we'll get your answer, right?
Okay.
As a player, Old Blue, right? Played in college, you become a coach. All right. Now, coaching and playing are two different worlds, right?
Oh, it's two different worlds. Yeah.
Okay. So hear me out. Do you feel like you've made better connections with people as a player or as a coach?
Wow, I would say I would say if you're looking within the United States, I would say as a I would say as a coach, but outside United States, playing like places Dubai, Belgium, and England, I would say wow, I would say playing because I think when you're playing, like for instance, we all know like coaching in the United States, coaching rugby, especially, and I always say like this: I'm a pioneer at the game, especially being a black man. I don't have any funny accent or anything of that nature. I'm right there from Queens, man. Like and I would say I'm a pioneer in terms of a brother. Doing something like this, and like I go back to my neighborhood, they'd be an old neighbor, they'd be like, rugby, man, what are you talking about, rugby? But I would say playing because on a wider scale internationally, rugby is played. Rugby is one of the most popular sports outside the United States. So being able to meet good friends, meet good friends like Alex Foster, Ben Foden and all of these guys, and it's because I was a player that allowed me to make those international friendships. Coaching, I think coaching within the United States, allowed me to move about and to elevate through things. And coaches follow coaches. I didn't want to tell you this as well, but I knew who you were a long time ago, back when you did in Minnesota, you're doing those 6 a.m.s, coach, I followed. Coach, I was always a big fan, always a big fan. I remember having a conversation with Coach Brent Nelson, when he started Iowa Central Community College, and he didn't know who he was watching. I said, Coach, listen, you don't reinvent the wheel. You watch what other coaches doing it. And you take pieces and you listen in and you be like, okay, hey, and you listen in to coaches and be like, okay, so this is an honor to be on your podcast. And I remember I watched a snippet of Nick going to your school, and looking at some of the things you've done at Minnesota and what you continue to do and continue to elevate as well. Always been a big fan. So I always see and from another American to another American, I don't know the background much say, but another Americans always see oh wow, hey, you don't have to have a funny accent, and I always think about guys like Joe Lipper and all of these guys, coaching and guys don't have funny accents, or Kyle Sumption, at Dartmouth, they're homegrown coaches, homegrown coaches that has put the work in, like myself, put the work in, and like actually take the time. Is not work harder, is work smarter, learn the X's and O's and know the game and being able to preach it to kids, and to be your authentic self, and that's why I think a lot of young men is graduate towards me, because they're like, wow, okay, Coach T, he's himself. Every day he step on the field, he comes to practice, he shows up as himself. He's not gonna BS us. He's not gonna, he's gonna tell me like how it is. So just to answer your story, I know I'm going on tangents, but this story, to answer your question, I would say a little both. I would both, and I'm sure Lance probably said the same thing as well. No,
you have to ask him. You have to ask him, or maybe one day I'll get Coach Lance on the pod. He's doing a bit of coaching himself.
Yeah.
T, you've mentioned a couple names in there that I'd be remiss if we didn't shout them out, man. Brent Nelson, Nelly at Iowa Central.
Yeah.
I was one of the only teams that would play him after a while, and we would get our asses kicked, bro. Like Nelly's doing.
Man, they were scared.
Nelly and Lip are doing a hell of a job down there, right?
Yeah,
Joe Lippert, shout out to him. And you know what? I'm very flattered by the words you said. You never know who's watching, so man, thank you. That means a lot to me. And like I didn't know that, and clearly I just reached out from when I started the pod. Like Coach T looks cool. Let's talk to him, right? Nelly was one of the first coaches that came to me and said, "Hey, man, you're doing a hell of a job there. Keep going."
Mm-hmm. Same.
Yeah. And I couldn't thank him enough for that, bro, because like that 2019, 20, 21, the COVID pandemic timeframe, everybody was in their own bubbles, their little worlds, and I had no idea, and it was only after we were coming out that Brent said something like that, like, man, you just doing a hell of a job. Keep going, bro. And I was like, oh shit, dude, a varsity coach said that to me. All right, let's go. Let's keep going. Yeah.
Coach, I was like, I tell you this, like, you people are watching, when you show up at the CRCs and show up at these tournaments and like someone come over to you and be like, hey, hey, you that guy from Nazareth, you that guy from Fordham. Hey, I've been seeing some of the great things you're doing and some of the content you put up. I'm like, man, I love it. And I'm like, wait, and you walk, because you when you're in the zone, you're going, you walk, you like, wait, did so-and-so just actually congratulate me? Does he know I'm a fan? Does he know, so hearing guys like Tui Osborne, all these guys, saying and I'm a Bonaventure grad, hearing these guys, like when Tui and them, or guys like TC Thomas Clark and all these guys, and admire, or Stephen Lewis and all these, they say like, hey, Taye, you can do it, or you good at what you do. You're like, wow, you get yourself a pat on the back. You're like, all right, they gotta see a little bit more. Let me work a little bit hard. Let me tighten this up. They gotta see a little bit more. I gotta earn. Yeah, like I earn the stripes they earn. Yeah.
You're right, man. Like you look up to it's weird. You look across you're looking on social media every day, right? And you're seeing these other coaches doing things, and you're watching people, and you're like, damn, that's big time, and then you do get recognized. And I was actually just telling my partner this morning. I said, I walked in, I had a conversation with VO this morning, right? And they were talking to me about some promoter stuff. And I was just like floored, like, oh, wow, you want me to do promotion stuff? Cool, whatever. And I walked in, I was like, babe, if I ever lose the little bit of shock and surprise that someone finds something I do interesting, please just punch me in the face. Like, I don't ever want to get ahead of myself. I want to be surprised when people say something nice about me. Not that I think I'm bad, bro, but like that just gives me that little bit more motivation, right? And I see that in you too, bro. Like, you said, I have to go back to this. You said Marty Veal. Everybody says he's a character, and you are 100,000% right. I toured with Marty in 2016 on the Eagles.
Yeah.
I have never had more fun with a coach.
Oh,
and I've never met a man who was more of a maniac, right? Him and I both got warned. Richard Avery was the head ref at the time, and we were in Uruguay, and one of the players got taken out with a clothesline, and Marty and I came unglued in a technical zone, And we got a call the next day, like, you two idiots need to get back on the bench and shut the hell up. And we were like, oh, sorry, man. Like, didn't realize that we were actually on video. But did Marty ever take you on the motorcycle, bro? Did he ever let you ride it?
No, I'm not a motorcycle guy. Marty, like, man, like him, myself, a few other guys, like, we would go down to Lippy's and grab a drink, every now and then. At the back end of my career, I was in the Old Blues leadership, I had the privilege of being a part of that, and just being able to chat things with Marty. I still speak to him constantly. Like, it's not like, I make sure I give the man his flowers constantly. Like, hey, coach, like, you're tough as nails. you're hard as like, you tough as nails, and like, he's not, but the biggest thing is he's his authentic self, you know, and like, he's not afraid of being an authentic self. He's like, he knows X's and O's. He can, like, man, I'm one of the best, X's and O's coaches I know. Along with Stephen Lewis, like, these guys, they know the game, and they've been around the game, and like, so much knowledge, and just be able to like pick up whatever they put down. You're like, okay, like, hey, coach, trust me, I call Stephen Lewis all the time for advice, like, because sometimes you'd be like, yeah, that sounds nice, Taye. I think you need to speak to one of the, the vets, that's been doing this longer than you, and ask him, like, where everything, where does it, where should I go with this? Like, even recently, like, Stephen Lewis over the summer months, he was like, hey, like, you're back here in New York City, you're doing some great things, you were working with the Foundry, brought me on to work with the Junior Foundry, when the Iron Workers was there as well. And he was like, hey, you want to help me coach Old Blue Sevens? I was like, coach, like, going from a player, a team that has looked out for me. Shout out to Brian Murph, Dr. Jeremy, and all of these guys, that have looked out for me and the old boys and everything, to now coaching. Man, that like, this past summer was like a dream come true, to be able to coach, some great players, and be able to work with some great young men, and be able to coach a young 23, like, I want to say, not 23, but a collegiate sort of side, a group of young boys, and go to nationals. It's just like, man, I'm wearing listen, man, God has put me in platforms that, sometimes I'm like pinching myself and being like, hey, you here, you're here. Or just like, and like, another thing I would shout out to, like, shout out to Ed, and like, Turbo and these guys, pencil me as the backs coach, going with those guys to France, going 3-0, knocking the hell out of some French teams, and letting them know that, America is no one to play with, putting a statement out there. And like, like Dave LaFleur, all of these guys as well. And, I'm just like shouting out names, like, throwing names out there, because I put these guys in, hey, I remember you asked me as well. You were like, hey, what's some other coaches, you were like, would want to see on the podcast. Honestly, Snacks, I was going to send you a list of probably 50 names. Like, I'm like, hey, this coach offers this coach does this coach does that. They will be brilliant for the podcast. I remember, like, I'm like, well, Ty, just pick three. And like, don't give this man a heart attack, like.
What I want to do with this pod is, the rule I guess I've sort of come up with is, once you're on the pod, you then could set up a show and you interview somebody. You know what I mean? Like, I don't look, it's great that I love hosting. I love talking to coaches. Don't get me wrong, but let's talk to each other. Let's meet more people, like, I'm not afraid to say, all right, Coach T, you want the platform on this date, this time, just make sure you got a mic and they got one, sit down and ask them their story, bro. Have that conversation. One of the things that's come up for me, and it's funny, I actually had a call today with a coach in Australia from Aussie Rules, and we were talking about how only other coaches know what you are going through.
Yep.
What we go through. That's that we could be the toughest competitors on the field, but we're walked off and we're sitting in the bleachers together, that quiet moment, you look over and you go, yep, yeah, I get it, coach.
Get it.
Whether you win or you lose, they're long seasons, they're long days. You care about everybody else, And so for me, this pod has given me an opportunity to meet folks like yourself and say, Coach, how are you doing? What's your story like? And because you know, you know,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? You know the struggle, there's days where you're trying to drill and it's just not going. And you're like, oh, guys, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'll do better. Right.
Yeah.
And my hope is to capture some of that with folks like yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Let's talk about you a bit more, bro. Like we've shouted out a lot of people. Have there been any interactions in your coaching career where you've experienced immense growth?
The first few years of building Nazareth's program, and
Mhm.
and as a varsity program, and a young varsity program at that, you kind of measured in numbers, like in recruitment and how many kids you're bringing in. And I remember starting out, asking God, like, wow, like what should I do, and where do I go, or just, like those long nights that you're just stuck in the office and you're like, recruitment, it's not working. How do you recruit someone to a school of no one's heard of? There's no program,
Mm.
and is it just selling myself, or, and I remember, having I remember one night, sitting in the office till 9 o'clock, and it's now February. Applications were already in and like, man, I don't have no one. I remember, just sitting there and just sitting in the office on the floor, not even in the chair, on the floor, and just praying to God, like God, like you brought me this far, and I know, there's something I need. A sign, Lord, just give me a sign. And I remember one of the kids, Kenny Boggs, he's a Chicago kid, was one of my first commits, and this kid, I think 2 days later, this kid's like, I don't know, Chicago. I don't know about leaving Chicago, but you speak a good game, coach. I'm on board. From there, and he was a prestige athlete. From there, he helped me get his good friend, Nathan Burnett. And then from there, I remember, once I got one, because you start building that, you're like, all right, if the wheels turning, your wheels turning. Like, I got one, I got two. You're like, all right, you start getting that confidence in yourself, like, hey, I'm at least going to hit 16. You start pushing the number each time. You're like, and then by the end of it, man, I remember, recruiting these guys from New Jersey, and bringing them all in. I realized when I brought Kenny in, then when I brought him in, and I brought a few other guys together,
Mm.
I'm like, wow, I'm like, what you do, T? When you recruit in mass. So you're going to bring in kids from, let's say, New Jersey, New York City together, right?
Yeah.
And then what you're going to do is you're going to take them on a tour around the school and say, hey, this can all, almost in a sense, pull out the red carpet and say, hey, guys, this could all be yours together. Together, you're going to build something that's going to live for a long time. Together, when it's 10 years down the road and they come in honoring, they're going to honor your class because you were the founders, just recruiting them together. And I realized, like, right then and there, like, oh, this is what you do. You use other kids, recruit other kids, right? You just use them. You're like, hey, like, in one, you have kids like Kenny and them say, hey, come play with me, man. I need you. I know you're gonna be, getting Curtis Rayford, getting, Steven Beck and these guys, David Guzman and them, Khalil Lynch, and Khalil Lynch was an All-American, and
Mhm.
allowing these guys to help recruit and help build the program. People was like, oh, Taye, you're offering scholarships to kids. No, Nazareth don't offer anything. You know,
Yeah.
you basically, like, kids are coming there. I realize, like, we build a strong team, especially off that first CRC appearance. I remember doing interviews there with Nick, and doing other interviews, and people were like, what are you looking for? I was like, hey, I'm just looking for our guys just to play. We're just happy to be on the platform with the Bonaventures,
Yeah.
with the Cutstowns and the Dartmouths of the world, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, like, and like, man, like, that was like, wow, we made it. And I've never been to a CRCs, and dreamt of it, watching
Mhm.
it on television back when it first started. And you like, like, man, sevens, they really, you're like, man, and you're watching, you're like, I could do that. Oh, I could outrun that kid. Oh, I could have done that. But I would just remember that opportunity of in its early stages, infancy stages, just like saying, hey, stick to your guns. He's gonna make a way. And like just learning, like, okay, and on the recruitment floor, like allowing the kids to actually recruit and help them recruit for you. And another really good story I can share, and it just actually hit me, was like, when we almost beat Dartmouth,
Mm.
Nazareth, back in 2022.
Mm.
We almost beat them, and I remember the scoring line, young man, Brendan O'Neill, really, I think he's pound for pound, a really strappy fly half, led us, to a, 26-21, and I remember going over shaking Dom Warren's and shaking Kyle Sumption's hand, and and Dom's like, D, in like Nazareth, people asking Nazareth, they're gonna know who Nazareth is, and like just doing that there with some, great talent there. And like, even now with Fordham, working
Mm.
at Fordham and being at Fordham, we had a terrible season. We got last year, we did really well. The academic year of 23 to 24, we did really well. We won that Rhino Bowl,
Yeah.
like guys were like, on high with that one. We went to CRCs again, CRCs at Fordham, and guys were doing well. It was like, we thought, like, hey, we recruited a big class coming in. We had a big class coming, like with Gavin McNichols and the twins, Gabe and Declan. And we thought, like, early on that, okay, we're gonna be something special. We didn't have the best season this year. We took a lot of L's, took a lot of L's this year, and like, I remember just scratching my head, like, where's this, oh man, like, hopefully I have a job after this, like, and hopefully, yeah, like,
Yep.
but one thing I admire with the kids as well, like, that they wear their hearts on their sleeves, and that do or die attitude, like, hey, our kids being young, we stepped up every week.
Yeah.
The results weren't in our favor this past year, but and like, these guys won't know that, like, and I've been humbled, when you lose, as coaching, like you just said it earlier, like, only coaches know, these guys don't, my players don't know that I hate losing.
Mhm.
Actually, like I stay up all night, watching the film back and like trying to critique myself, like, Ty, what can you've done, and like, but one thing I think Dave LaFlamme always said, like, hey, like, like, you did all you could do in practice, if you can't get a field and you're yelling at kids and like, they're unprepared, then you got to ask them, did you do enough at the, as a coach in practice? So like, I pride myself on now understanding, like, hey, losses happen, losing is part of the game,
Yeah.
it's just, it's a part of learning. Not every loss stands for, not every L stands for loss. Sometimes it stands for learning, learning.
Yeah.
And that's, I got this year, like I was telling the boys, like, this is probably the first year I haven't been ranked since like 2021, and it's been like, and I'm like, wow, like, and it's like, but the cool thing is, like, I get to go back to the drawing board and now we usher in 2025, and I'm like licking my chops and saying, okay, boys, here we go. We're back on the saddle. We got another class coming in. Guys gonna be a lot older. We like, got a new strength conditioning coach and Shane Dempsey, and working with Coach Fede and like Nick Bruno, these guys, and and like it's been really great, and just like we get to see a young team develop, basically. So yeah, I know I'll keep going on tangents, but yeah.
Well, you bring up a lot of good points, Coach,
Mhm.
right? And a lot of points are brought up on this podcast. And I think you're hitting on some really interesting stuff here around, L's don't always mean losses.
Mhm.
You either win or you learn either way, right? Even when
Either
you're
way,
winning,
yeah.
right? And I think, you know, we've all been to that point where you've got a few in a row or more than you would like in the season. You've had more learning lessons than wins.
Sure.
And I think that's when you start coaching, right? That's when you find out who's going to coach, who's going to buckle down with you,
Yep.
who's going to stand in that trench and say, all right, how are we going to fix this? What are you going to do? And, I get to put myself back in places where I was when I hear coaches talking about moments that they have.
Mhm.
And man, that feeling of like, it's on, let's go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's funny. My high school football coach used to tell me I used to lose a lot of sleep, and then I remembered what he would tell us. He'd say, "A billion people in China don't give a shit what just happened to you, and the sun is going to come up tomorrow. And when
Oh,
you
yeah.
get up tomorrow, keep going." And it's like, okay, cool. And now I've tried to instill that in my players. Now, you know, I, we all have a few L's in our career
Mhm.
that stick with us. Do you have any that you have that stay with you that like we called it carving our history into the walls at Minnesota, right? Like, do you have anything that's carved into your wall that you will always take with you, like an L or a time in your coaching where it's shaped what you do now?
Well, I think as a player, honestly, we always took out the rivalries with Old Blue and Nyack, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and you like as a player, I remember early in the early stages feeding into that rivalry and being like, man, I hate those guys, and then you get older, you start realizing like, man, those guys put their pants on two legs at a time. You here stuck in a rivalry, and those guys just enjoying life and just enjoying rugby. With me now, L's and losses, I realize it's a part of the game, a part of the game. One thing I've learned, and I mentioned that, hey, this year not being ranked, you know, I see it as a way of like, Taye, like, like you know the ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
Get back to where you need to be, you know.
Yeah.
So you got knocked off the horse. That's the best thing that could have happened to you, you
Yeah.
know. You get knocked off the horse because now you either lay down or you get up. And I was telling myself, you damn sure ain't gonna lay down, so you're gonna get back up. So it's like, like you have the ingredients to what it takes to get to the level. And and I always tell myself now, I always say 3 words. If I can go back in time and tell myself 3 words: stay the course. Everything happens for a reason. Good and bad. Good things happen to bad people, bad things happen to good people.
Yeah.
Stay the course. God has a plan in all things. And one analogy I always use, like, it's not gonna rain forever. The sun gotta peek its way through the clouds. So
Yeah.
I always tell myself, stay the course, win or losing, it's a part of the game, and staying humble, you
Got
know,
it.
staying humble, knowing that, and staying humble, not even just through coaching and life in general.
Yeah.
Knowing that, at any given moment, something can happen, but staying thankful and grateful for the time that we do have, and, and the time that we do have, and the people that I get to impact, you
Yeah.
know. I think I've become more, I think early on I was more about wins and losses. I become more just grateful for the time I get to share on the platform, honestly.
Yeah.
I find myself more and more just saying like, hey, taking it all in, opportunity to go to France, with the NCR All Americans, opportunity to coach Old Blue, taking it in, and then soaking up more knowledge and growing as a coach, and just saying like, okay, hey, I always carry my journal around constantly, writing on the subway, and just like reading my book and everything in that nature as well. And just like, hey, taking things in little strides,
Mm-hmm.
all in little strides, and just continue dreaming, man. Like, continue dreaming. But yeah, I don't anything. No, I don't like. Like nowadays, like, even some days, some losses can be like, I try to shake it off by day 2 and be like, all
Yeah.
right, like, like it could have went any other way. And those, and like I always ask myself, I always tell the boys, like, like you never want to leave a pitch, wondering what if. You
Yeah.
down the line, you don't want to be the guy with your friends in the bar, having a pint. You're like, man, we could have been. What if we would have did this? We could have been good. You know, don't take anything for granted. Enjoy the time now. If you're going to do anything, do it at 110%. Like you said, the people in China don't give a damn. I'm still going, man. So,
You're right.
you
You're
know,
right.
enjoy your victories, and one thing I've been telling myself as well, like, enjoy your milestones, because like someone is dreaming of where you are now. So every little thing, take pride in everything that you've done, everything that you accomplished. Because we as humans, we forget, because we're constantly and I can tell you, Coach, I'm always goal oriented. Hey, the next thing, and not taking time. But now more and more, as I'm getting more, especially within the collegiate, world, and like me being a college coach, year number 7, I find myself just being grateful and taking time just to, it wasn't a great season, but what did we get out of this season overall? Culture overall at Fordham has been better throughout the students. The students, with the players have been way better. Guys enjoy each other. Guys actually showing up, because losing, Coach, you understand, losing, players start being like, all right, I'm out. Hey, Coach, I'll see you in the spring, like 7th. Okay, great. But one thing I admire the guys at Fordham, we lost, but we lost together as a damn team. And every week I watched them in practice 3 times a week, lace them up, put them on, and go in war with each other. And that's something I tell them, that's why I was licking rubbing my hands and licking my lips, because I know something is brewing. And that one thing is gonna happen, that those guys are gonna be like, hey, here we go.
Yeah.
Like that brotherhood, us against the world. Let's go, boys. We're gonna look to one day, and hey, Dave, hear me now, man. We're gonna look to knock Brown the hell out. They got the platform now, and Dave has built an amazing team there.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you here, I'll share a loss with you. Right? They beat us. I think it was 99 to 5. Yeah, Brown. I'm not afraid to say it. And and that was our last game. But I understand, my biggest thing is and I've never been beaten like that bad as a coach. But I'm like, well, Taye, what you want to do? You got 9 to 10 freshmen out there, and you're starting 15, or you're starting 23. They got to learn somehow.
Yeah.
He's going to teach them. It's going to make them and be, eventually they're going to be like, hey, we're tired of being bullied.
Yeah.
And we want to do the bullying. So I'm like, Dave, you're hey, enjoy the championship. We're chasing, we're, Liberty next year. We know by all 2025, we're going to be back, and a coach, mark my words, we're going to do another podcast, I don't know when. Kofi, here we go, Coach. I'm like, Snacks, put me back on. Let's do this again, and then yeah.
I don't doubt that at all. Right. I find you as a coach who's very in tune and connected to the experience of his players.
Yeah.
Right. And that's important for them. And I see you as a coach that sets a lot of examples.
Yeah.
Right. That score, when it's 99 to 5 or whatever that score was, right? And you're in the technical zone and those arms are crossed, and you're internalizing, right?
Yeah.
You always have to come back and say something to the team that's about the team, right? What would you want your players to know about you and how you're thinking in those moments, right? If you had an opportunity to give them a window into Coach T's brain and heart in those moments, because that is the loneliest place in the world, in that box. It's not going well.
Yeah.
You can't fix it. You're just waiting for the time to run out. What would you want your players to know that's going through your heart and your head at that moment?
In my head and my heart is saying, stay in the fight, boys. Stay in the fight. Sometimes eventually, the score is not going to be in our favor, but think about, bind together, as a team. It takes 15 guys. It's not, this is not basketball. LeBron James come down the court. Like it's not football, Aaron
Yeah.
Rodgers and all of them, Josh Allen them in the, pocket. It takes all 15 players, And one thing I keep telling guys, I was telling guys, we always, myself and Fede, we always reiterate this year was like, hey, talent will only get you as far. You guys got to learn how to win together. And I think, in the past we utilized talent because we had some great players like Fran and Santi and them, Angie and these guys. But but the biggest thing is like, guys, like take it on the chin. You want to get, hey, you got knocked the hell out. Hey coach, you'd have heard my halftime speech. You'd have been like, man, T might kill someone. Because I was telling guys, you either want to do this for another 40 minutes, or come sit next to me in the technical zone. Come sit next to me, because or dig deep. Dig deep. We're not playing to win. We're playing for the patch. We're playing for the heart. And we're playing for the guy beside us that he's bleeding and holding his head. I remember one kid, Jack Murphy, he cried. Coach, listen, and like you like as a coach, you get emotional. And I remember going up to him like, hey, you did your best. He's like, no, coach, you guys took me up to. I'm like, bud, you hit your head. So I can't even fathom like going out there and like still trying to hit every kid, and get concussed and rolling on the ground. And he's like, no, coach, don't take me off. I'm like, bud, your day's done. You did your best, for that kid, and watching those kids go and go and go. You gotta, as a coach, you stay humble and you say, okay, hey, here we go, boys. It's okay, guys. It's okay. It's a part of the game. We're not going to always be here, boys. We will learn how to win. We will learn how to win. We will go back to the drawing board. We will fix things. And be honest with you, a lot of those scoring lines that we, this year, it was like when I coach, I'll be honest with you, like, we lost Iona by 7. We were in the last 15 minutes with Fairfield University. We were within, like, in the 15, we were within 10. And we're a young group. We didn't lose games by blowouts. Only team was like what? Dartmouth, big shout out to those guys, and and Brown. The other team, we felt like, a lot of guys, I remember guys leaving the field like, T, we should have won that game. I said, yeah, boys, we should have. We should have. Once again, do we have right now, and I always talk about, that skill level. Is everyone on the same level? Or do we have some guys that's talented? Or do we have some guys still trying to develop and get there? So we got to bridge the gap, as a team. My biggest thing is like, playing as one, as a team, realizing like no one is bigger than the team. Everyone has a job to do, whether you give them water from the bench, your job is just as important as the guy actually, going kicking through the uprights, kicking conversion, so it's always telling everyone, and we have a big team of 60 guys. I'm thankful for each and every kid. Like, even telling one kid, hey, Kyle, can you go get those balls as, they start flying over the gate, and I'm thankful for them. And one thing I'm always gratitude saying thank you, because I know I was in these kids' shoes, you coach, you on the receiving end, like, but my biggest thing is like, and I wouldn't trade this season for anything. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I would say, guys, we weathered the storm. We weathered the storm. We'll be back here. We're gonna lift heavy, and the boys are like, yep, we're lifting heavy. We're getting stronger. Those freshman guys like, hey, coach, I'm about to hit the freshman 15. Put the weight on. I'm coming back. Never again. I'm like, there we go, boys. Because if your players are saying it, your players are like, that's the biggest ingredient is the players, the body from the players. And then from there is the X's and O's. Once the players buy it, it makes it easy to teach the X's and O's to the guys. So that's where we are right now. We just had a lot of young guys that were seeing rugby for the first time at the collegiate level. And they're like, coach, in high school, I just cut up the field. I'm like, bud, that ain't it anymore, man.
No, you are exactly right, coach. Like every level you move and you stay in the game, right? Whether you go from middle school to high school or high school to college to senior club, and even the divisions in senior club, every level is like a 10 to 15% increase in speed and intensity, right? Like you're not gonna be the best out of the gate. Everyone on every other team was their best high school player.
Yep.
Right. And I think you're saying a lot of things, and I think the big message, and you're a big skill guy. Obviously, the X's and O's are important. The physical preparation is important. But this year, I think what I hear you saying was the skill you're looking at is how to be in a position to win a game.
Yes.
And then finish that game. That is a skill.
Yes, that's a skill.
That is like, and at the collegiate level, that is really hard to teach without taking some lessons.
Yep. Absolutely. You said it nicely.
Man, I one of the philosophies I try to impart on my players to try to get that going is if you're within one score, you're within 3, 5, or 7, 2, whatever, right? You have an opportunity. Keep it close. They're going to score, you score. They score, you score. Good teams score.
Mm-hmm.
If you're within one score, you got it. You just got to then have that killer instinct and go for the throat, and I don't doubt that you're going to get there, bro, with the large freshman class that's now in the weight room over the winter. I don't want to play you in the spring, bro. Just letting you know that. Man, I'm really grateful and thankful for the time we've spent tonight, bro. And I don't want to take up too much time. You're on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. My dog has tried to insert himself a couple times. Thanks, Baloo. But in closing, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to leave people with? How do you want people to engage with Coach T, with Taye? Like, what do you want to leave people with?
Establish where you want to be, then work backwards from there. Like just establish where you want to be. If whatever you want to do, like for instance, if a young man wants to be a doctor, what steps went into becoming that doctor? So I'm always thinking about it with myself, like, hey, if that's the result, what was the formula that we put in place to get to that number or get to that, that place? So with me, like, man, like just once again, I'm just humble, very honored. I don't have any mantras or anything like that I can say, hey, yeah, here's my parting words, that, hey, this is the Coach T way,
You literally just said it, T.
Yeah.
You said, find what you want to do and deconstruct that backwards.
Yep.
And then those are your steps to get to where you want to be. If that's not a mantra, bro, I don't know what is.
I know. But I'm taking it from someone else, man. Someone has guided me with that and gave me that, so yeah.
You've also said tonight, great coaching is finding other coaches, borrowing, adapting, putting it in your context. So, I mean, that's your thing, bro. And man, what an honor it was to meet you electronically. I'll see you in person someday, but thank you so much for coming on the pod, bro. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Coach, blessings to you and your family. Hey, Coach, keep doing what you're doing. From another coach to another coach, thank you. Thank you for creating this platform, for allowing me to be on the platform. I'm excited to see where this goes, how this continue to elevate you as well. Good luck to your boys as well.
I got the women too, bro. I got the women and the men at Cal Maritime.
Good luck to the women as well. That's amazing. I'm a big fan of yours as well. I caught a little bit snippet of you and Lance's, this past weekend when you guys were doing your, it was on their live, and I was like, hey, just what you probably have to expect a little bit, T. Just be ready for this, but I appreciate you. you.
Thanks for tuning in today. If you liked what you listened to, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. We appreciate any followers and any input. This is the Coach to Coach podcast with Sean Lindersmith.